Toto, everybody. My name is Kate and I am no longer a graduate at Auckland Transport, and that kind of hurts to say. Honestly, it feels like not that long ago that I was starting university for the first time and wondering what I was going to do with my life. That ended up being 10 years ago, and time just has a way of flying by. But never mind that. It's kind of weird to be on this side of the virtual screen or stage talking about this like I'm an expert in graduate programs, but here you go. Basically, what really stuck out to me when I was in university and what I remember the most is kind of the angst that you feel when you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life. It's quite a big, overwhelming idea, right? Like you don't know what's going on. You might have some ideas of what is out there in the world, but it's a pretty big place at the end of the day. So what are you supposed to do? And I remember being in my 5th year of my law degree and all my friends applying to fancy law graduate programs and then realizing, oh yeah, you can't study all your life. Oh no, and I didn't have much of a plan at that stage. What my plan ended up being was having a do-over, doing a master's degree in urban planning, and thankfully that landed me a job in the Auckland Transport graduate program. Didn't need a third time's the charm for that one. And yeah, it's the graduate program is now known as Ngā Kaihui, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about that program, a little bit about Auckland Transport, as well as my story as a graduate as I went through the program, and highlight a real key area, I think, of where exploratory graduate programs like Ngā Kaihui can do for you as someone who's starting out in their career. So Kenzie's presentation was awesome for going into the micro. I really loved hearing about a day in the life of the Stats NZ grad. Mine might be a little bit more bigger picture, but hopefully together they really help you sort of get a picture of what it's like to be a graduate. So first and foremost, Auckland Transport as an organisation. Feel free to comment in the chat about sort of what you know about Auckland Transport. I love hearing what other people know about us. A lot of people seem to think it's just buses and trains and cars and parking tickets, but it's a lot more than that. It's about what's behind me. It's about the cyclists over here, and it's about pedestrians, and about making sure that people get from A to B in a reasonable period of time. And there's so many complex things that are behind that. So Auckland Transport is probably one of the most diverse organisations that I can think of, with the sheer amount of fields and roles that we have. We have a full finance department, a full business technology department, hundreds and hundreds of people. We've got HR, we've got a really sophisticated customer team, which looks into not just dealing with customers face to face, but figuring out designs for better customer solutions. So there's lots of out of the box thinking. It's far more than just engineering and planning and project management, the roles that you sort of associate with an infrastructure organisation like us. So what Ngā Kaihui does really well is that it takes that really exciting base, this hugely diverse field, and then it basically opens it up to you as a graduate. It says, this is our strengths. You find yourself within this whole landscape, which is really, really exciting. I always like to start talking about Ngā Kaihui with its name. Why did we choose Ngā Kaihui as a name? If you don't know, Kaihui means paddler. Hoi is the oar of a waka, and kai, whenever it's sort of starting out on a word, it typically means personal responsibility for something. So a kaihui is a person who is responsible for the hoi. They're responsible for moving a waka forward. And Auckland Transport likes to view itself as a waka. It uses that language a lot of the time. So this program is basically pointing to our graduates and saying, these people are the engine of AT. These people are the future leaders of AT. They're bringing AT into the place that it needs to be, which is so exciting. The way it does this is it has a full learning framework that's designed to build personal development skills step by step. So as you start in your career and as you progress, you'll get skills as you need them to help you build that commercial acumen, that business acumen, and be a confident worker. And that will complement a work experience that allows you to explore the whole business, which is really exciting. Now, an exploratory graduate program like this is really, really good for people who have are studying more general degrees like arts or science, and they're not entirely sure exactly where they're going to land based on the skill sets that they are gaining. They're more general, they're more, I hear the word soft skills a lot. I wouldn't necessarily say they're soft skills. They're very important, crucial skills to, do well in business. But you're basically not targeted on anything from your degree. So an exploratory program allows you to really figure out what you want to do and where you fit based on that. But even if you're doing a degree that is more, there's sort of one path, like if you're studying engineering or planning like me or law, and you're like, I know what I want to do. I want to be an engineer or a planner or a lawyer. There's still a lot of opportunity in this program to help you figure yourself out, because there's far more to work than simply knowing what you want to do. Knowing how you like to work and knowing who you like to work with is just as important as knowing the what. So what do I mean by that? Let me talk about my own experience as a graduate at AT. I started as a graduate planner, as you'd expect, because of my planning degree, and sort of really got to know the infrastructure side of AT. I was I was supporting a team that had a job of applying for resource consents to council. Basically, whenever AT wanted to build a road, a station, they needed to do any kind of development to make the transport network better, our team was the one who went to council and made sure that we had the permission to build that project. Very complex when we're dealing with projects that are 10 years in length and cost, multi-millions of dollars easily. So that allowed me to really figure out what planning was all about. And you might have heard that work is very different to uni. And that phrase always drove me insane, because I was like, how is it different to uni? Like, I'm still working in university. I'm learning all of these important things. If these important things weren't important, we wouldn't be learning them, surely. But the reason why they say that, just to give you one example, in planning school, we're taught best practice, right? We're taught about all the great things that you could be doing to make a city a better place. But then I went and actually worked, and development is driven primarily by what needs to be done, by, projects that need to be done. And a lot of my work was focused on things like getting an application to cut down a tree to make space for our double-decker buses, or to pile, heavy piles into the harbour and set vibrations off into the water. So it sort of felt like I got into this job to protect the environment, but what I was actually doing was harming it, even though it was to contribute to a bigger picture of sustainability. It didn't feel that good at the time. I was like, this isn't super gelling with me. It's not what I want to do necessarily. Another thing that I learned, though, when I was in that team, was I discovered the importance of mana whenua engagement. So that is when we basically go to the iwi, the tribes of Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, and work with them one-on-one or group to group, and basically make sure that they are across all the projects that we are doing, and that we're not doing anything that they say no to, because we're partners under the Treaty of Waitangi, and we need to make sure that that partnership lives up. And I noticed that there was a real lack of skill that people had doing this. Project managers and planners are the people who have to talk to mana whenua, but there was almost a fear, like people sort of saw mana whenua as these big scary people who just ask these big scary questions to be, annoying kind of thing. But then what ended up happening was they didn't answer their questions well, and that annoyed mana whenua, and then they got stroppy and asked even harder questions, and it just kind of created this negative cycle. If people had the skills to actually engage with them properly, then the problem would never happen. So right away, I said, if I want to be a good planner, I need to go and work with mana whenua more closely and build up this skill set and become good at this. And I had the opportunity, because I was a graduate, to go off to our Māori policy and engagement team to manage our engagement and work with them as a graduate there, a full-time graduate for 6 months, and then a part-time graduate for another 6 months, because I loved it so much. I had the flexibility to do that. And under the mana whenua Māori policy and engagement team, I did so much. So I attended mana whenua hui multiple times a month, and I got to know the kaitiaki quite well. I got to work on the Māori employment strategy, which is a hugely important piece of work that's all about creating a workplace that is attractive to Māori, that is supportive of Māori, and that will hopefully raise our staff numbers up to be representative of the Māori population of Tāmaki Makaurau. I got to facilitate Treaty of Waitangi workshops because I love public speaking so much, and they were an absolute joy to do. All of these super chunky, important projects that isn't just normal business as usual, that goes far beyond what the average staff member could do at Auckland Transport, because I was a graduate. It was really, really exciting stuff. And all that time, I still had it in my head that, yeah, okay, I can't sort of repeat my final year of law school and not have a plan after this. The graduate program is going to be over soon. So I talked to my first planning team, because even though the work didn't 100% gel with me, I liked people well enough, I liked the work well enough, I could do it, I was good at it. I was going to be a planner, right? I had a planning degree. What else was I going to do? And I basically firmed up with them the opportunity to land in their team once the graduate program was over. But I was lucky enough to be noticed by someone from our HR department. He attended one of my Treaty of Waitangi workshops, and he just sort of took a little bit of interest in me. And one day he asked, sort of, how's it going? What's your plans for after the graduate program? And I was like, oh, thanks for asking. I'm going to be a planner. I've secured this job in the planning team. And he was like, oh, interesting. Okay. And then he asked me more questions, like, so how's your graduate experience been? Like, what have you really enjoyed doing? And I could answer those questions really easily. Like, I loved working closely with people. I loved finding creative solutions for things. I loved presenting. The Treaty of Waitangi workshops were like the highlight of my work here. And I said all of that. And he said, that's fantastic. So where does planning fit into that? And that was like a bit of a moment. And all of a sudden I realized, oh goodness, do I have a plan anymore if it's not going to be a planner, if I'm not going to be a planner? And that's what I told him. I said, like, I'm a planner though, I'm qualified in planning, that's what I'm meant to do. He said, you're not a planner. You're a person, and you've got skills that are helpful to planning, but can be applied to everywhere, all across the business. You don't need to be limited just to what you're qualified in. And that was such a revelatory moment for me. Thankfully, this guy who was talking to me happened to be in charge of the graduate program at the time, and he was redesigning it to make it more in line with Te Ao Māori and Whanaungatanga, and my team, the Māori Policy Engagement team, had just helped him name it Ngā Kaihoi. And he asked me, do you want to keep working on Ngā Kaihoi with me? And I said yes. And for the next couple of months, I worked full-time. I had the opportunity to just launch myself into HR work, which is a field I never in a million years thought I'd ever work in. And I got to use my experience as a graduate to help redesign this program to be even more helpful for graduates than it was for me, even bigger and better and more about community, designing a learning framework so it touches upon the skills just as you need them and create this beautiful thing that, I absolutely loved. And looking back now, I sort of see Ngā Kaihoi as a bit of a legacy of mine, something that I contributed to, and something that really helps view myself as a future leader of AT. Thankfully for me, HR kind of stuck. They liked me well enough, and it didn't take long for me to find another permanent role after the graduate program in the learning and development team at AT, which has a job of basically making sure that all of our staff have the skills that they need to do their jobs well. So now I get to figure out what the business's learning needs are, design solutions to address those learning needs, whether it's a course or a workshop or an e-learning module or anything like that. I build them and create them. And sometimes I even have the opportunity to deliver them in a class just like this, and use most of my public speaking skills. Funnily enough, my arts degree, which I was just doing for fun, ended up being the degree that I'm using the most now. So that is kind of the joy and the benefit of an exploratory graduate program like Ngā Kaihoi. So if you're wondering what you're meant to be doing in the world, if you don't know your place yet, consider applying for a graduate program like Ngā Kaihoi. I really encourage you to look into Ngā Kaihoi and consider applying. We'd love to hear from you. Even if you know what you want to do, have a look anyway. It's good for all kinds of people, all kinds of students. We'd love to hear from you. This has been my talk about our graduate program, Ngā Kaihoi, and thank you very much.